Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Morning all and welcome. Welcome to today's hearing of the Yoorrook Justice Commission. This is a continuation of the hearing block 7, that is our inquiry into the historic and ongoing social injustices of Victorian First Peoples. But before we commence our work, I would like to invite Commissioner Hunter to do the welcome to country.
I'd like to welcome you to my ancestral lands, the lands of the Wurundjeri, and pay my respects to elders past and present, all those that have come before us to pave the way so we're able to have voice today to seek truth and justice. And just as part of that, I'd like us to all be upstanding for a minute's silence due to sorry business that's happening, particularly Aunty. So we'll just take a minute's silence. Thank you. I'd just like to also acknowledge that Aunty was one of within the first lot of elders to give evidence and acknowledge her contribution and efforts towards our community across her lifespan. So Woman Jekka, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hunter. Thank you. Council.
Chair, my name is McAvoy. I appear as Senior Counsel assisting the Commission. I will be taking these witnesses this morning, and Mr. Tim Goodwin of Council assisting will take the witnesses this afternoon. Council assisting acknowledges the Wurundjeri people and all First Peoples of Victoria, and we too note the sadness with the passing of a very important elder to the Victorian community. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Gemma Caffarella and I appear on behalf of the State of Victoria. On behalf of the State, I would like to thank Commissioner Hunter for her welcome to country and acknowledge that today's hearing is being held on the land of the Wurundjeri people. I would also like to acknowledge the sorry business that you spoke of, Commissioner Hunter. I acknowledge the Wurundjeri people as the traditional owners of this land, the land that the hearings are held on today, and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. The State pays respect to Wurundjeri elders past and present, Aboriginal elders of other communities, and all other First Peoples who are here today or watching online. Thank you.
Chair, this morning we have witnesses from the Victorian Aboriginal Health Service, and I call them now. I call Alan Brown, Michael Graham, Darren Lovett, and Gavin Brown. I understand that the witnesses might be known to a number of the commissioners. If I might start first with Alan Brown. Could you just tell the commissioners your full name, please?
Hello, commissioners. Thanks for the welcome to the country, Sue-Ann. Alan Brown.
And do you undertake to tell the truth in relation to the evidence that you will give to the commission today?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. Michael Graham, could you please tell the commission your full name, noting that you've been here before?
Michael Bruce Graham.
And do you undertake to tell the truth with respect to the evidence that you are to give today? Mr. Darren Lovett, could you tell the commissioners your full name, please?
Darren Andrew Lovett.
And do you want to tell the truth in respect of the evidence that you will give to this commission today?
I do.
And Mr. Gavin Brown? Could you
Gavin Thomas Brown.
and do you want to tell the truth with respect to the evidence that you will give to the commission today?
I do.
Thank you.
Welcome, welcome. I'd like to say welcome because I haven't seen some of you for so long. It's great to see you again.
Thank you, Chair. Now, I understand there's some opening remarks that the members of the panel would like to make, and after that, there is a proposal to speak to a PowerPoint presentation from which questions that might then be asked. The commissioners will note that there's also a written submission from the Victorian Aboriginal Health Service contained at one of the materials. Will you each be making introductory remarks, or has someone been nominated to speak on your behalf?
And so I think what we'd like to do is announce who we are so that people understand our background and our history and knowledge of the work in which we're working. A little bit of background on each other, on ourselves first. And then I will start with a bit of opening. What we look at as the story of VARS, which happens to be also the story of health determination for our people in this state.
Thank you. And do you mind if I call you Michael? So shall we follow the same order in terms of introductions that we took the undertaking? Would you like to go first, Alan?
Yep, sure. Yeah, Alan Brown. I'm Gunditjmara. Having said I'm Gunditjmara, I know the beautiful country where I'm from and where I'm connected. But I grew up not far from here. Grew up in Collingwood, grew up in Fitzroy, literally on the doorstep of the commission. So I know in terms of a VARS context, I'm an urban Koori. I know the city, I know the noise, I know the environment, and that's part of who I am. I've been at VARS for, look, I think it's mid 30 years, over 35 years. Stopped counting after a while, but been a board member for a long time, over 20 years, chairperson for over 10, held various roles through the board. Had a couple of stints in senior management positions, but also managed the men's unit, and at the moment I'm the ambassador for VARS, which is a fancy title. I think it might be the first one in Victoria, possibly the country, and it's a good vision of VARS. It sort of indicates about who we are in terms of our thinking, where Mick and others sort of said, look, we need to get the best out of you. And so ambassadorial roles, so I make a speech, cut a cake, go to cut a ribbon, all that sort of stuff, but also come and advocate for the organisation. And I do manage a lot of the history stuff for the organisation. But I do know VARS really well, because I've lived it since I was about 20 years old, that type of thing. I'm a life member, but so some of that, it sort of goes beyond that with my involvement with other parts of the community health sector, like VACCHO. I went there and helped set VACCHO up and helped build all the frameworks and all the partnerships that we enjoy now and things like that, and to close the gap, which is, I was at the big table early on when we were talking about setting that up. So I sort of just want to impress upon the commissioners that I'm a local fella, I'm a city fella, and I'm a footy coach, and I've got 12 grandkids and 6 of them in Cairns, and I miss them dearly. But there's also other parts of who I am which are important to today about just a knowledge of the organisation, and part of that includes an honorary member of the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners, which is sort of interesting. That'll do. That's all. That's me.
Thank you, Alan. Michael?
Thanks, Alan. Michael Graham, Jar Jar Rung, Wiradjuri, Yorta Yorta, Waveroo. Yes, been a hard week since Aunty Faye passed away as part of our mob. Great matriarch of our people in many different areas. I am married with 10 children. It's a blended family. Some are mine, some are my wife's, some have been other people's, and we've raised through child protection, but they're all ours. And those 10 children have given us 25 grandchildren. So we're quite a big family. I've been a VARS client ever since VARS inception. So that's, 51 years. All of my children and my wife's children, all of our children have all been clients of VARS. All of our grandchildren have clients of VARS. VARS is more to us than just somewhere where we go to see a doctor. It's part of our family. And it's also been our learning ground where we go and talk to elders and we get taught about life and how to live life to its fullest. As I've said before in previous hearing, I carry many hats as well. Chair of VATCHO, Chair of the Aboriginal Health and Wellbeing Partnership Forum, which is co-chair with Minister Thomas, and also co-chair of Naween Maru, which was my last hearing, which also has me co-chairing the Close the Gap Partnership Forum. And I also chair the Northern Metropolitan Aboriginal Strategic Governance Group of the DFFH. So there's I should also say that also puts me at the table of the Coalition of Peaks, and that's the National Coalition of Peaks and the National Joint Council, and on the board of NACCHO. So I sit at a lot of tables and I hear a lot of the stories. And I know the heartbreaking it is to hear many of those stories. And as I said to you last time, you must hear a lot of heartbreaking stories, and I still think about that quite often because I'm in the game of healing. And I think I was thinking about this on the way in, about why I do things. And for people who know me on Facebook, they see me put up a lot of dad jokes because I want to see people smile. That's my aim. I just want people to be happy and smiling. So that's why I do what I do. My community has supported me ever since I can remember, and VARS has been a big part of that because it does more than just the health. It does the well-being. It does the social work as well. It does everything. So that's who I am, and I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you very much. Darren, Lovett?
Yes, I'm Darren Lovett. I'm a proud Guditjamara man. And like many of these fellows here, we're probably all Guditjamara people here as well. But just to relay on what Alan had to say, that we are all products of the Victorian Aboriginal Health Service. So back in the early days, so even then, sort of remember the very, very early days when actually there was very little about what was the Victorian Aboriginal Health Service. And generations of our children are all sort of embraced and came, are on that journey with us. Myself, I've was grateful to start working within the community back in the early 80s there in a program called Yoorrook College Aboriginal Health Workers Program. Alan Brown was a coordinator there. Dr. Bruce McGuinness was the dean. And you had all these lecturers around there, sort of great people, Gary Foley still around, and people there like Dennis Walker. These are people that sort of like that I had sort of the chance to meet in my lifetime. From then on, I think everything else is kind of sort of, you kind of gravitate and you get pulled into your community. And I've worked there at Victorian Aboriginal Childcare Agency after Yoorrook College, and then went off and got a law degree. I studied there at the Institute of Career Education, Deakin University. And from then on, I sort of just been around a bit, sort of never got into sort of fully practice because I think I just went on and sort of went back to sort of help teach there at Yoorrook College, not Yoorrook College. Institute of Victoria Education. But I think part of my journey is also too is that, you know, that we always sort of seem to sort of fall back, and now I'm in this area there with for the last getting on to 6 years now, working here at Victorian Aboriginal Health Service as the manager there of family counselling services. That's me in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. Gavin Brown?
Thank you. Yeah, Gavin Brown. I'm Gunditj Chamara also. G'day Wedong, and I'm the Chief Operations Officer at VARS, and I have been back at VARS for the last 7 years in this role or similar roles. I did, like everybody else, I'm Story Fitzroy, product of Fitzroy. I am grateful, very grateful for the upbringing we had in Fitzroy with all our old people living at home at that time before all the services were around in the 60s and things like that. And we think that we're quite blessed with that type of education we got at the time. And it certainly holds us in good stead now. So I'd like to acknowledge all of our old people that played a big part in our upbringing and given us the values that we carry today. So I did start working at the health service at the age of 15. I was, like Michael, a client since day one. And but I left school and went to VARS as a dental nurse at the age of 15. And what that did for me, the health service and community control and all the people around us, was it allowed me to see a future for myself. I'm so grateful for that as well. At that point, I decided that I wanted to get into management. I wanted to lead organisations in this space, and I was 15 at the time. And by the time I was 25, I became a CEO. It was VASAR at the time, but of community control organisations, and I've worked in that space since in management CEO level for over 30 years. There's a lot of volume in that, in different sectors, in native title, in New South Wales Land Councils, at the gym for a while, and at VASAR, and I was sort of senior manager at the Advancement League. So I'm really pleased to bring my skills back to VARS after that journey. A lot of involvement at state and national level for different reasons. And all I do now as Chief Operations Officer, I sit on one board, which is the Worawa Trust Cemetery Board, and all my time is dedicated to building VARS, ensuring VARS operates, and that we are building a future and looking after our people as per our values. So that's me in a nutshell. I do have a large family as well. I have 14 grandchildren, and like everybody else. So, you know, we have a lot to do, and you know, we want to still continue to instill these values in our kids. And if people get to see a future like I was fortunate enough to do, I think that's a wonderful thing. I'll leave it there for the moment as well. So
Thank you very much. Yeah, I understand that that you'd like to assist the commissioners with some discussion about the history of VARS. Who will lead that discussion?
I will start with just an overall short one, and then Alan will start the story.
Thank you.
I think listening to some of the hearings that you've already heard and thinking about my previous hearing was we talk about the system failures, process failures and everything like that. And we don't actually see ourselves as people in that system anywhere. And, you know, it got me thinking about, and I remember Commissioner Lovett, you asked about where is a good place where we've actually, you know, been supported well and been able to do something. And I mentioned that COVID was probably the one and only time that I could think of where we resourced adequately and was able to do a great job. And then it got me thinking even more about where are our good news stories? And, you know, here I was working in probably one of the biggest good news stories, the adversity that our people had to face before VARS was set up. We didn't belong anywhere. We weren't being serviced. You know, there was a whole lot of issues that our people were facing at the time. And so, you know, in the way that I've been taught over many years through storytelling, and I think probably the best lesson I got from my mum was to be respectful and to listen and learn. And I still do that today. I'm still learning, but I thought that this was a great opportunity to come in and talk about how a people who are up against everything. We don't fit in government systems. We've got media casting this dark shadow over us all the time, but we're still here. And one of the reasons why we're still here is because of organisations like VARS. And so I thought I wanted to come in and share that story of VARS from its creation to where we're at today. He's sort of our walking library. He's a bit of a hoarder of all of our documents. And he's working on getting that digitalised at the moment, which will be great for all of our mob going forward. But I've asked Alan to come in and share that story with the rest of us.
And now you would like to move to the PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, that'd be, if we could do that.
I'll just arrange that. The operators. Thank you. You can indicate when you want to.
How do I just,
Say next slide.
yeah, this is part of a PowerPoint that we use. There's a combination of several PowerPoints, but fit for purpose today. Part of our presentations that we all do is we've got to inductions for staff. And a lot of that is for our own Koori staff who come in, who are new to the organisation, of course, but new to the VARS story. But it's also for non-Aboriginal people who really don't know much about Aboriginal people at all, doctors and psychiatrists and all that. So that's a bit of a combination of all that. One of the key messages about VARS today is we make a difference and we save lives. And that's what we do. And there's stacks of evidence about that. I'm sure that's available to the Commission. It's got when you need it. But anecdotally, the things that we do, the stories that people tell us, the engagement we have with community, the feedback, consultation, is all about thank you. You've made a difference. And people have said to us, you have saved my life. And that is just that's just a game changer, because we work in a tough environment. The staff are high expectations from community. There's challenges all the time, but we get through it. And like I said, simply make a difference. So thank you, Suhan, for that acknowledgement to welcome the country. VARS is always respectful of traditional owners. We do have a position about this is Wurundjeri land and people of Kulin Nations, never ceded, and we wanted to honour and respect that. That's part of the health journey for us, I guess for Wurundjeri people as well. But we'll just go to the next.
Just before you go any further, I just need to check whether you're happy to take questions from the commissioners as we go along through the slideshow.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, but
Okay.
yeah, I'm sure these fellas here, if you just want to chip in at any time as well, I guess.
Yes.
So I just don't want to do it solo, but yeah, I'm pretty.
Please continue.
Yeah, all right. Okay, that's that bottom photo there, the building on the corner. That's Mick might elaborate about this a little bit later on, but that's we actually own that building. It's one of the good things about the health service in terms of starting to own things and own assets and all that type of thing. But we'll go to the next slide. Here we are. We'll go to the next slide. Okay. Before we get into the nuts and bolts about the VARS existence, one of the important mentions about VARS is, the core of who we are is about what we are. And like we're 51 years old this year. Now, we second oldest Aboriginal organisation in Victoria, second oldest Aboriginal organisation, Aboriginal Health Service in the country. Started from humble beginnings at 229 Gershon Street. You can almost see the building from here. And that's quite unique. Real humble beginnings, volunteers, people decided that we needed to do things different. But one of the core principles about VARS is our model of service delivery, and it's embedded in our history. It's not just made up some new thing. It was done right from the very beginning. The group of people that met in Fitzroy and said, we need an Aboriginal health service, we've got to do something, decided that it had to be done under the guise of a principle called community control. And your commissioners might hear that from time to time in here, and it gets bandied around our community. I think it's over-theorised. I think it's overthought. I've seen it work at VARS and other places. And it's basically Aboriginal people controlling Aboriginal affairs. It's Aboriginal people running a health business. It's us expressing our self-determination and that's what community control is. And the model we do it is, of course, with a registered body, and we form a board, and we vote, and we run the place. That's the local community. That's the model. But community control is also more than that. It has depth, and it has integrity, and it has culture connected to it, and it has community connected to it. And that's one of the key principles about VARS. I think it's best summed up by when we talk to new doctors coming in, we ask them, when you see an Aboriginal person, what are you looking at? And they say Aboriginal person. We say, well, no, what are you really looking at? What do you think you're dealing with? Do you see someone who's given up, or do you see someone who's resilient? Do you see someone who is strong-willed, or somebody that wants to put their hand out? And they sort of, we want to shift their relationship with patients to one where there is a connection here, and the person that they are seeing is one of the owners of the organisation. The patient is one of the owners. That's what community control represents. They don't own the bricks and mortar. Well, technically we do, I guess, but morally they're the owners. And that's what community control is that where everybody is a stakeholder in VARS. Let's go to the next slide. One of the other unique core principles about VARS is our definition of health. We're more than just a medical clinic. There are lots of good medical clinics around where doctors are employed, and they run a great place, and you can go there and you can get patched up, but then you've got to be sent out to the real world, and I guess that's a difference in VARS in terms of our history and our philosophy, is that our definition of health is based on more than just a medical model. Very early on, we realised, look, the people that built VARS realised early on that there are things we have to bring our own cultural constructs into our health service, the things that are important to us, like family and community and culture and land and rights and principles. But we also do need to employ doctors and nurses and psychiatrists. We need to grab the best of the Western medical model and bring them into our world and get them to work for us to help improve our health status. So that basically encompasses the VARS definition of health, where it's a bit more than just that clinical model. Let's go to the next one. Okay, that photo you see up there, that's Doug Nichols' Sunday school in Kerr Street, Fitzroy. you might recognise some of the families there, but I think it's about the VARs, like other Aboriginal organisations, have their roots in Fitzroy, because our community was based in Fitzroy from early on. I think one of the important messages on that slide, where we say Aboriginal people have a long history in Fitzroy. Yes. Aboriginal Fitzroy was awash with poverty, discrimination, unemployment and homelessness. Yes. Tough times. But the other part of that picture and that story is the things that we've heard from people who lived them times. And every time they tell you about living in Fitzroy, growing up in them tough times, they've got a smile on their face. Because there's lots of love. There was love, there was connectedness, there was sharing, there was caring, there was safety. You come from outside of Melbourne, outside Fitzroy, you ended up in Fitzroy. And part of that is, so there was joy and happiness as well, despite the tough times, which is part of the resilience of metropolitan of us. And one of the key factors of that is the caring. And you'll note that the VAR's motto is caring for community. So it wasn't some PR term. It wasn't some marketing company that put that up for us. Caring for a community is embedded in our history in Fitzroy and embedded in who we are. It actually is part of what VARS is. Can we go to the next one, please? Okay, you might recognise some of the people there. I did need to let commissioners know there might be photos of people that you know and people that have passed away. So I do apologise.
Hey, Al, can I just add that I took that photo, by the way? Right.
Oh, there's Johnny Mac and Punchy Rose and Aunty Sissy. All right, so we should name them.
Yep.
But and that's in Atherton Gardens up the road from here. But our health in the 70s was an international embarrassment, a national disaster. And in Melbourne and in big city Fitzroy. I mean, our health status was deplorable. And people that were dying, the closer gap was 22 years younger than the rest of the country. Despite, like less than a kilometre from this photo is St Vincent's Hospital. I mean, that's an indictment on the health system there. I know we didn't want to enter into that, but the health system, I mean, St Vincent's might as well have been on the moon in terms of service delivery and what it was going to do for us in Fitzroy, where our community was located. Not far from there was the Royal Children's and the Royal Women's and the Royal Melbourne and Mercy. But we were in one of the best health precincts possibly in Australia, maybe the rest of the world, and we're dying 22 years younger. That's that's life for us in the 70s. And that's why people organised, and that's why people met and decided that we need to do something about it. Let's go to the next slide. Like I said, we don't talk about the VAR's health philosophy without connection to country and connection to land. And VARS is a political organisation. The decisions that VARS makes are political. It's always, we've done submissions to the Human Rights Equal Opportunity Commission. We've done submissions to the Deaths in Custody Royal Commission. We've been there, done all that. And there is a clear connection between the history of this organisation and the political advocacy of our community. They are hand in glove. They go together. You don't separate our health status from our from our other well-being issues which we have. Good story about that photo. That was a lead up into the bicentennial games protest in whenever that was. But I love this photo because I can see my brother there, Anthony. See my other brother there, Gavin, leading the march. But but they're all VARS staff. You can see Lynn Cassidy's still got a nurse's uniform on. What are they doing leading a land rights march? What, shouldn't they be in the clinic? Well, we reckon that's just as important. When you talk about the history of this organisation, and part of our proof is that is just as critical, just as important for us to be in that at the front line, than at the front line at the medical clinic as well. Let's go to the next slide. And the issue about land rights and is clear connection. There is a paper that will provide to the Commission that's called Land Rights, Health and Sovereignty, where it's the VARS. We wrote this 40 years ago. You know, there was some, Nick mentioned the historical stuff. There are some diamonds in the rough in terms of some of the position papers that VARS has developed in terms of our philosophy, and which makes us a critical organisation in terms of contemporary Aboriginal history. Land rights, health, connection to the country. The position on VARS on land rights is pay the rent, you're on Aboriginal land, and sovereignty never ceded. And that is so critical to the health and well-being of our people that not negotiable, strong position is at the core of Aboriginal people's well-being. Next one, please. That is our position on health and well-being. It's one of the unique positions that VARS has in terms of how do we approach health. Talks about a holistic approach to our well-being, what makes us different than the Western model. So, you know, 1973, people that, you know, put our organisation together had some strong cultural connections and strong philosophies about how to approach and build a health model and influence the rest of the country, influence the delivery of health services to non-Aboriginal people later on. We know the stories about good ideas that other health services have, the mainstream services, and we just look at them and smile and say, that's not a bad idea, because, you know, we've sort of been doing it for a while. But let's go to the next slide. Okay, part of our culture is to respect and honour where we come from, and particularly for Victorian Aboriginal communities. And look, 4-5 significant people who are so important in the fabric of who we are as Victorian Aboriginal people. Just their advocacy and their leadership is extraordinary, and we honour that. And the things that they, and we've got our own who possibly followed them. Aunty Thorpe, our first administrator, you know, moved down from the bush, 7 kids, single mum, worked for nothing, and would work in a hotel at night to sort of get by. Bruce McGuinness, our chairperson for a long time, quite often called the architect of community control, just a political influencer who was a game changer as well. Jim Berg, was involved early days for us. Reg Blow was our first president. Edna Brown was our first member. We've got, I'm not sure, 400 members, but Nan was our first member. And I sort of found her membership form and all that type of thing. So, but Nan is famously known for setting up the funeral service and just stepping up to the plate to take that on and to do that when no one else would do it, sort of thing, and to ensure that people would bury with dignity. Anyway, so, but what this is about VAR's history, not just being transported into time and then it all happened. I mean, there's stuff that precedes us, and there's people and energy and things that happen where that moment in time, it was right for us to be able to do what we needed to do. And now we're part of the current sort of thing that's going on. Hopefully one day people will say the same sort of things about that gang of four that's sitting up there. Anyway, the next slide. All right, like, I don't know. I was pretty young in 1973. I think I was about 15. But I don't know what Australia was like, but it wasn't good for Aboriginal people in terms of racism and treatment of us and how our rights were expressed. So a group of local community people got together and said enough is enough. We're dying too young. We've got to do something about it. And they had community meetings. And we've got all the minutes of 1973. There was 8 or 9 meetings which happened. We've got the minutes. We'll possibly share them with the commission if you like. And extraordinary conversations were going on. And the people and the names and the families that were represented in a clear direction about we want to have our own health service, and how that was formed and discussed. And the decisions that were made, even back then, the vision of VARS back then, the people, like I reckon the people back are courageous to step up and under adversity from the rest of the country, our rights. How dare you set up an Aboriginal health service? How dare you? Why can't you go up the road? You've got a big hospital up there. The denial of us for our right to have our own health service. And then these groups say, hey, we are going to do it. But then to be able to have the vision to help other communities in Victoria. In the minutes, we've got some of our doctors. Despite our need in Melbourne, in Fitzroy, we sent doctors to Rumballara and help at Marupna at the site there. And so doctor would drive up and come back. We sent doctors down to Warrnambool, despite we needed them here. So there was that caring thing. There's a conversation with Nessie Scooter, who's a fantastic lady from Gippsland on the NAC, National Aboriginal Congress, who came to Melbourne, and she wanted a health service, or they wanted to set up a health service in Bairnsdale. And VARS loaned, I think is the right word, that group of that committee $2,000 so they can employ a nurse. So that's the type of things that VARS did as well in part of the history. So it was the like I said, we can go next slide. It was a group of extraordinary people doing extraordinary things. I might move this on pretty quickly. All right. I'll finish on these 2 slides. The early days was on health, but the key principle about VARS is the rights of Aboriginal people to run our own health service. It's a core fundamental principle about our right to determine our own health journey, our right to be as patients to own our service. And that's embodied in all the human rights charters all around the world. But the good old people from Fitzroy, they were talking this in 1973, before it became popular. You know, the group of people that we all know and the families and groups that we engage with, the core principles of our fathers was to have no blinkers, to be creative. We'll go to the next slide, then I'll finish me. No, the next one, I think, the next one. Yeah. Was about the principles about our well-being. And this slide talks about some of the fundamental conditions about health, what you need to be a healthy person or a healthy family. And VARs embraced that before it became part of the language, and took off the blinkers and said, what else do we need to do in our community to ensure that we get to that? What are we doing about physical activity and sport? Oh, let's help set up the Fitzroy Stars Youth Club. Let's get the footy club going. Simple things like that. What are we doing about babies? Under fives club. What about kinder? All right. What about we help the APRA reform? What are we doing about education? Let's build our own workforce. Yeah, all right, good idea. Well, let's get Koori College going and let's run a health work education program. What are we doing about burial, about people? Yeah, let's help Edna, let's help Nan raise raffle money and bury people, and let's help get Waruna, our cemetery. What are we doing about art and craft and people activity? Let's help set up Nindabai workshop in George Street, Fitzroy. What are we doing about homeless men? Well, let's help set up the George Wright shelter. What are we doing about aged care? Let's go and talk to Aunty Iris and Faye and others and help set up ACEs. So the point, so I think what I want to finish on is VAR's core business is primary healthcare, and that's part of our history, but it's embedded in cultural constructs that come from history and from community, but it's also about the holistic approach to health. Thank you. I'll leave that there.
Might just ask the other panelists if they've got anything that they want to add to that short piece.
I might just start with a bit of an overview of. I hear this quite often, and I still get goosebumps when I hear it because I know all the hard work that's been put in, and it talks about my family, my friends, and I see me in that, which is different to outside of Aboriginal organisations. I just wanted to highlight that when we was colonised, invaded, whatever you want to call it, and everybody calls it different things, our systems were taken away from us. Our language was taken away. We weren't allowed to speak our language. We weren't allowed to do song and dance. We weren't allowed, all of our systems, they tried to take them away from us, and they sent us off to missions, and they said, don't practice your culture. Don't do this, don't do that. And the people who congregated to Fitzroy said, if we don't do something, we're going to die off. We've got to change something. So we had our old systems, and then there was the new systems. So they brought them together. And that's how we ended up with the health service and the legal service and all that, because we was able to bring our system into the contemporary system at the time, adjust to the environment that was around us, which is no different to what we've done for tens of thousands of years. Depending on the seasons, we adjust to the environment. So this was the environment we was living in. And I mean, courageous. Can you just imagine going from people not even recognising that you're walking down the street And all of a sudden you're setting up these constructs. I could only imagine people were, basically throwing rocks at people kind of thing, not physically, but like who do these people think they are? We're trying to get rid of you like you don't exist here. But here you are, you've adjusted to the environment and you're creating all these constructs. And as is our way, we didn't just look after the mob just in Fitzroy. Okay, what do you need in other areas? Because we'll help out and we'll put ourselves at a strain to do that. I'll finish on this bit with one more thing. Gavin and I was in a meeting in Queensland 2 years ago, I think it was, and there was a lot of the urban health services there. And there was Uncle Les and Aunty Mary and that from Brisbane Akes. Brisbane is the equivalent to VARS down here. And when we was finishing, I did say to them, I said, look, I really wanted to thank you for having us up here and we really appreciated it. And the elders there said, well, Michael, it's reciprocal, because when we were starting up Brisbane, it was VARS who sent equipment up to help us get started. So it wasn't just happening in Victoria, we was doing it across the nation. And, talk about COVID. Do you know how many people across the country from health services contacted me? How are you doing this? What's your system? What's your process? What's this? The whole thing. What's your model? VARS is so much bigger than just Fitzroy. It's unbelievable. And I'm still learning just how much influence we've had through NAO, which became NACHO, and a whole range of other things. I mean, Alan could sit here and talk to you for 3 or 4 days about the history and what we've done. But I won't allow him to, because we don't have that much time. But we even do this kind of stuff with our directors every couple of years. And most of them know the story, but they just love to hear it. It brings back that purpose, that love, that feeling of what we're here for. But I'll pass it on to any of the others that would like to add to that.
I just want to add one thing at this point, Michael, and it is about the impact of the Aboriginal Community Controlled Health Movement, just not here in Fitzroy. I just want to elaborate that we were VARS was second in the country after Redfern. We share an anniversary of quite a few other ACHOs, Alice Springs Congress, Brisbane, like Michael said, Perth. At that time, there was only 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. I guess after 51 years now, there's over 150, I'd say 150 ACHOs or medical services in local communities across Australia. And I know that, I think there's 28 in Victoria, Michael, right? So, numbers are fairly close. And I know that, like Mick said, VARS was influential in all that growth. I know it's been changed through government and things ebb and flow and all that. But essentially, that whole Aboriginal community controlled health movement has had a really big impact on the survival of our people post-colonisation. And I think that's a really important thing to consider, and because it has been one of the biggest movements in that space, and it's still not enough. The talk was always, the discussion was about putting a health service in every community so that they could have their own community health service, so they can determine their own health needs. So that's always an ongoing struggle, I guess, in that respect. But purely alongside everything else was said, the growth in that area has been phenomenal. That's a hard word to say when you're on live, but I got it out. And I just think that needs to be recognised, for those efforts of all those people and all the people that now work in the Aboriginal health sector. So it's been, like I said, one of the best movements, and has one of the biggest impact post-colonisation.
So there's resilience and strength in our community to get a service going. And the environment is a lot different now than it was in 1973 or 1983 or 1993. Government were not supportive of Aboriginal community controlled health services. And it was challenged, it was under-resourced, never seen as a proper health system, a health service, and there was all types of barriers and influences and roadblocks put to progress of Aboriginal community controlled health services by by government. And sometimes we have to step outside the government realm and go for resources, philanthropic. Koori College for the first 2 years was funded by the Reichstein Foundation because we couldn't get funding from, they didn't believe in our vision. And after we graduated 80 health workers in 2 years, they said, that's not too bad, we'd like to fund that. And, you know, sometimes it's what you get, because that changes, that. The other interesting challenge about that is perceptions of what influences decision makers. Now, I can remember I was a Victorian representative on the National Aboriginal Health Council, and that was an advisory group to the Minister for Aboriginal Health, Michael Woodridge, who's a member for Keelan, I think. He was the Minister for Health, and I was his chair of one of his subcommittees. I was on the workforce. I went to see him about that. We talked about workforce stuff, and I said, but whilst you're there, you've got to advocate, You've got a minister in the room. You got to push him a bit. And I said, mate, you've got to put some resources. You've got to fund Aboriginal health services. You know, we need you to invest in what we do. And he said to me, Alan, there are no votes in Aboriginal health. There are no votes in Aboriginal health. This is a minister of the Crown, the Minister of Health, telling me that we didn't matter. And it was either in the government cabinet, or it was either White Australia doesn't support Aboriginal health. But the point was there were no votes there. There's no support, and it's like a dagger in your heart. You know, so that was tough. But I went back and I said, thank you for that, Michael. Appreciate your honesty. And we went back, and what we had to do was we had to change our strategy, because back in the day, we played the man a bit. You took on the person across the table, and you advocated for rights and self-determination. But what Nacho did and Vaz is that we started to build our case and build our evidence, and we became more evidence-based in terms of what we need and that type of thing. But that, I'll never forget that Michael Woodridge sort of mentioned that to me.
Can you just repeat what year was that? Was that about?
He was the Minister for Health. I don't know the exact
80s, 90s. What do you think?
I reckon it's 80s. Yeah,
80s.
Yeah.
Not too long ago, really.
Absolutely, mate. It's like, yeah. And maybe wonder what influences decision-making and resources and all the things that come from that. And in the end, it felt like, nobody supports what you want to do. I mean, despite the fact that we were dying 20 years younger than the rest of the country, we didn't matter. And it's heartbreaking. It's tragic. It's sad, but we had to change minds very quickly.
Do you think things have changed, or is there still an undercurrent of don't really matter?
Yeah, I think we're part of the landscape now. I think we're embedded in it. There was a time when we always felt vulnerable. I mean, don't muck up or they'll shut you down. And there's always that fear of two Aboriginal organisations, I guess, not just ours, that we are at the beck and call of powers elsewhere. But I want to be cup half full and say that we're in a stronger position now. Nick?
Yeah, I think I want to say that I want to stay positive and say that we're getting listened to more. But listened to doesn't always equate to actions. And some of the actions that do come in, it's sort of drip fed. we're talking about closing these gaps, by 2031. It's not very far away. And I know as I'm getting older, the years seem to go quicker, but we're not going to close the gap by 2031. It's just not going to happen. There's no real investment going into health and well-being. It's just dribs and drabs. And, it does scare me to think that, and I've said it before, I get quite angry the fact that I have to go and hear my children in another 10, 20 years talking about the same story that my mum was talking about 20 years ago. And that's, it's angry. It's anger inside. But, it's a different environment in the fact that there's less of the aggressive fighting, and it's more that evidence base that we're using, and we're slowly getting shifts within departments. Just the fact that they're actually sitting at the table with us and listening there is well, that's a good thing. I was just thinking before, because I can see the picture of Gertrude Street building on Alan's slide there. VARS has multiple sites, and Gavin will touch on that a bit more. Up until this time yesterday morning, this time yesterday, we only own one building, and we've got all these sites delivering services. Late yesterday, I got a letter from Minister Hutchins to say that they've released the mortgage on one of our other buildings. And now we have two buildings. I think we got 5 or 6 sites going at the moment, but the Gertrude Street building still sits as a peppercorn lease. It's a part of our history, not just the VARS history, but the whole community history, but it's in peppercorn lease. And the Nicholson Street building is a real weird one. We actually own the building, but the land belongs to Department of Education. Like, none of these things make sense to me. But we did buy Plenty Road ourselves, which was great. We're leasing out of our other sites and everywhere else, commercial leases. We keep asking, can we get some ownership of this kind of stuff? Can you help us with some capital so we can buy something? And me and Gavin were working really hard on it last year, and both state and Commonwealth will say, well, if you've got some land, we can help you to build or work on that land. And so I said, well, so technically what you're telling me is if I had a shack sitting on a paddock, you'd help me to fix that shack. Well, technically, yes, but you got to own land. Well, where are we going to buy land from? With what money? We've had to be innovative. We're working on some other things, but it's all about us doing all the hard work and being innovative and not getting the support from the government who's supposed to be looking after its citizens. So it's a long answer to what you're asking. I do feel like it's less of that fighting and more of trying to negotiate, which we're not winning the battle too much, but we're getting somewhere.
Gertrude Street, you opened that in 1973, is that?
No, well, the original building,
79.
Sorry,
Yeah, 79.
Gavin can touch on,
Yeah,
because he likes to
1979.
tell this story.
but it's still under a peppercorn lease, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then your other one that you're currently in on
Nicholson
Nicholson.
Street,
Nicholson,
Yeah.
how long have you been in there?
1993.
Just a correction on that. The very first one was down across the road there from the builder.
Yeah, 229. Yeah. Yeah, it was a
229.
private rental.
And
Yeah.
that was a private rental.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of historical fact on that one there too, because what came out of that was the dental service
Yes.
as well. But I think before that, there was the legal service, which Jim Burke helped set up. So what it was there, so you had this kind of sort of walk and sort of revolving, door, you go in there and you get your health and you go and, see something about your legal matters. But it did start off that way. And as it did, I mean, it just shows the amount of work that our community, our foundation members, our elders have got from those early. And Bruce McGuinness used to hate saying humble beginnings because he says we're survivors, we're fighters. And therefore, it's only just that because that where we see now sort of a whole generation of even like with leadership, like with Michael and all the other leaderships there in the past, have always been doing the same fight. But however, we still got to sort of fight there, sort of trying to get the fundings to look after our communities. Now, it's interesting fact, isn't it, to say that's like for me, I think what was it? What we're talking about 1980s. If your mortality rate of an Aboriginal male, around about 1980s, around about 40 years of age. So here I'm now, I'm kicking on a bit, so I'm getting on to 63. So what's that means now? That's like, what's my mortality rate now? Well, that only means that sort of because of what we have there within our services. That able sort of keeps us going and sort of making us, live longer. But it's really interesting when you sort of when I hear Alan sort of speak and particular too with all those photographs and everything and I can picture each part of that journey. That's like, I was there. But I kind of joked, don't I? I said like Forrest Gump, it's like he was there every time there was something important happening there within history. But it's like that, you kind of sort of like I can sit back and just see how vastly we have grown. So sort of from those sort of early days there when you only had about sort of one doctor that was on board. Now we've got about how many, Michael?
27.
27.
5.5
And the staff there, they're all volunteer staff at the time, talk about working for the dole. They were working for the dole back then. And here we are now, sort of now, over 300 staff and still going to capacity, only because that we're still trying to find more services out there to give to our community. And only just recently now, so I got one out there in the western suburbs, which is a community that's been vastly missed out on a lot of services. Bars has the vision. Sometimes it's, sorry, just one more. Sometimes it just wanders there. So like, when you actually see something that really works and sort of what is really positive, just have a look at that sort of 50 odd years of history there with ours.
Can I ask one more? Just around, we haven't touched upon it too much, but societal pushback around when you were advocating or when the community was advocating to set these, the health service up. What was the societal view of our people at that point in time? So we've heard about, politicians kind of saying there's no votes, but more broadly in society. Surely there would have been pushback in the community around wanting Aboriginal services in not in my backyard type of thing.
Can I start? Look, when it first started, it was very communal because it was first generations migrants and that, and it was quite communal, Fitzroy, because of poverty and things like that. So there wasn't really that much push and resistance. And I dare say that in the 80s, we were such a strong community that we sort of almost lived sovereign. So the real pushback was from government and things like that. We had our footy clubs, we had everything set up, and we didn't really step out of our circle that far in that respect. So I don't think there was that much. I didn't experience, Travis, others might. I know that, people had views with their friends and their things like that, but generally that didn't come till later from my experience, right? So I felt like that we were just really strong as a people, and we didn't move too far out of those circles, to be honest. So we weren't, and we had good leaders who really didn't expose us to it. So if that was taken on, it was taken on by leaders. So we were protected a lot in that sense. These fellows, I just want to come back to your question, if you don't mind, for a minute. I just want to reaffirm 1979, we moved into, and it is a long-term lease, peppercorn lease, and that building's iconic because it was one of our strongest periods, that Gertrude Street. And yes, it's unusual. We moved there in 93. The land is still owned by the Crown as well. So it doesn't give us real great security on those buildings, and I think that's something that we've always tried to address, but we haven't been able to, with everything else going, we haven't been able to bed that down. But in terms of an organisation, yes, we would love to have those as freehold title to build and secure our services. It's an ongoing discussion though, as you know, Susan. Yeah.
Just want to point out with Gertrude Street really quickly, that's where we held our first lot of hearings.
Yeah.
Aunty Faye gave her evidence,
Yeah.
and we must thank you again for the work that you put in to allow us.
Yeah,
to
no,
do
that's our pleasure.
that.
Yeah,
So
that was really
that opened
important.
our hearings as well. That shows you that it's in the history of a lot more than just.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so iconic. Yeah, I agree.
Travis, some of the pushback was also institutional. Like we were allowed to be our own little community in Fitzroy and out of sight, out of mind type thing, which I think Gab was referring to. And knock yourselves out, go and look after yourself. But as our focus became bigger, as it became more evident that this is a national disgrace, the health status of Aboriginal people, more people and wanted to get involved, and the health system wanted to be involved. And they started talking to us about partnerships and relationships. All of a sudden, they wanted to be our friends, but it was conditional. And the pushback was not on our terms. So, and the early days, them challenges were, hey, we own Aboriginal health. This is our business. We are the experts in our business. We didn't create the problems, but we know the solutions. But the pushback was coming from like credible hospitals and health institutions and government departments about it took a long time to be the owner of the partnership. They're like, VARS have got a position that we have to own the partnership. Like 50-50 doesn't cut it. It's got to be like, you want to enter into our world, we have to own that relationship because we are the experts. So, but there was pushback early, mate.
Yeah, I'm just thinking even more broadly around the political movement of the people. You have stolen jans, you have OIPA, kind of, people being transient, having to move around and so forth. So, yeah.
Yeah. To your question there, Travis, about societal. So where you look at, I mean, sort of what was really, evidence of it there too, more recently with the boys. So, back then, 67, referendum to vote. This time round, there's sort of a lot of goodwill there, sort of from non-Aboriginal people there wanting, us mob there to really get up there, and have a perfect say. But for my mind, I was apprehensive about it because to my sort of, and I hate it when I was right, that Australia wasn't ready for that yet because it just clearly showed because a majority of non-Aboriginal people, they sort of voted there for Aboriginal people not to be enshrined there in that constitution. And this is, and we talk about it now again, sort of institutionalized, systemic, and therefore, this is the constant grind that we have to keep going through time and time again. Hopefully in my lifetime, because, I'm 63 now, and I'm sort of thinking now, where's my mortality rate now? Is it going to still keep going on, live till 80? Who knows? But in my lifetime, I would like to see something that really believes that there is that sort of that not that sort of holdback there from what we get there from with our own funding sources and for right across everything within an Aboriginal affairs. But also too, we're talking about land rights and we're talking about treaty, and we're talking about this, even the Yoorrook, truth telling, fantastic, because we're actually able to get out there and we can express that, rather than sort of like in our own confines and saying that's like that's where we are. But as I said, that's like I just like to know that's like that we are trying to do the best we can.
Chair, without wishing to cut off any questions that the commissioners might have of this panel, I note that we are sitting for essentially 2 hours, and we've now been sitting for almost an hour and a half, and perhaps it's a suitable time to take a 5-minute break.
5-minute break, is that okay? Thank you. We'll resume in 5 minutes. And that's it. Or do you want to say 1 o'clock?
That's suitable. Thank you, Chair. Yes.
Right. Council, the
Um,
sitting has resumed.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask a question, perhaps first of Alan, and then any comments from any of the other panel members. You've talked about the connection between the VARS health system and or VARS as an organisation and the land rights movement. I just wonder whether you're able to comment about the ability of First Peoples in Victoria to attain full, well-rounded health in the absence of true justice and reckoning. I mean, that carrying that burden of injustice and the matters that this commission are dealing with, how much does that impede a person and your clients achieving their full health?
Tony, just before you start and Alan answers, just before the break, I just wanted to acknowledge that 2 of our directors have come into the room and they themselves are, been staunch members, directors, workers for VARS for many years as well. So I just wanted to acknowledge that before we spin it.
And can you just for the record tell us who those directors are?
Yep, Tony McCartney and Shelley Williams.
Thank you. And I'm no doubt the commissioners welcome them indeed. Alan?
Thank you for that question. When you look at the purpose of VARS and what we do, it's not just a doctor-led health clinic, and with this aim, where that's where our health change will happen. The primary healthcare clinic is one part of a wellbeing package, I think, for an individual or family or for a community. So when we talk about wellbeing at VARS, we talk about physical wellbeing, cultural wellbeing, and importantly, spiritual wellbeing. They're 3 of the 3 wellbeing factors, and land and connection to the country is a critical part of a person's spiritual and cultural makeup. So whilst we can do whatever we can to do to help a person with the various medical models that we have to get to a status of a physical well-being, there is always other well-being connectiveness that's happening in terms of the total well-being environment. And connection to the country is important to that. So that's critical in terms of a VARS approach. That's why we say pay the rent on Aboriginal land, sovereignty never ceded, because part of that well-being is about the right to be able to own that, and to it embodies your health well-being when you can live your sovereignty. Gavin's mentioned it before, and that you can be part of that struggle. I mean, part of the struggle is sometimes a healthy thing in terms of it's an activity, it's a journey that you're on.
Would anybody else like to comment on that?
I'll just try to phrase it like this. If you looked at what an Aboriginal utopian society would look like today, it would involve land and our connection. And I think until that's embedded in society, I think we're not going to have balance and we're always going to struggle. I always feel like we're floating. I almost feel like we're a surviving race and we want better. We deserve better. So I think it is important that it's recognised in the health of land as well, that it's embedded into our fabric of society. And I think that is what it looks like. And even from an operational point of view, from health, totally different perspective, is it gives us an ability to respond to things we can't deal with right now. We are sending people to hospitals to get treatment when we should be sending them back on country and the places that we should have instilled in our secure you know, in our security, so that we can actually respond to the needs of our people and prevent a lot of these things that are occurring. So it's sort of twofold for me. It is very much ideological as well, but it is meaningful in the sense that it does heal people. And at the moment, we don't have that in our construct. So however that looks like, or it's embedded, I think it's really, really important. And we won't achieve that sort of utopian area until we've got those type of things.
You want to say something else, Alan?
Yeah, in 1979, Malcolm Fraser, Prime Minister, mentioned treaty. He went public about treaty. And we have a press statement from 1979 where our chairman, Bruce McGuinness, issued a press statement wanting VARS to meet with the Prime Minister, as you do, to talk about his conversations about treaty. And VARS said, then we support treaty and we support the concept about what treaty can bring. And that's 6 years after we started. So that's what I mean. The early beginnings of VARS were about grasping bigger picture items which embodied our well-being. And in that press statement, we talk about why is treaty and the concept about justice around that important for the well-being of Aboriginal people. And part of that is recognition of country and all that brings.
So that expression of the importance of treaty to well-being from Bruce McGuinness at the early part of VAR's history remains just as important today.
Absolutely, still relevant. I'm fairly confident that the types of conversations are still happening around the leadership in VARS and the conversations about the current environment in Victoria. It's all relevant, but I think the important thing is that it is part of our well-being package.
And I think in his earlier statements, Michael may have said as much, but from VAR's perspective as a health service provider, does the process of truth-telling that this commission has been engaged in provide any health benefits for members of the community, your clients?
Yeah, it's probably a question that could be directed more to Darren because he deals in that healing therapeutic area. But, you know, as I've said before, the truth needs to be told, right? We know that, but it does bring up old traumas, and those traumas then ripple through the family, through to the community. And I know I've said it before, but I'll say it again, is that when our Aboriginal people come and sit here and open up those old traumas, those old wounds, or even talk about wounds that they're going through now, and once again, Darren can tell you about some more recent stuff that's just happened in the last week, that does ripple through the families. But if a minister comes and talks about their guilt, that, you know, that their role in what's happened, and, you know, all that kind of stuff, and anyone from the department coming in talking about how they feel we've been done wrong, then they walk out feeling like they've offloaded their guilt and they feel better, where our people mostly will walk out feeling worse because they're reliving those traumas. So yes, I totally believe that this process needs to be done. But it's kind of like we tend to use humour so that we don't get so angry. And one of the things that we sort of joked about yesterday and this morning was the Jack Nicholson statement of, you know, you can't handle the truth, because that's really what we're up against here. You know, they can't handle our truth. And, you know, they make promises sitting here at this table to you fellas and walk away and they don't fulfill those promises. And we've seen that already through the Justice and others. So, yeah, it had to be done, but is it making a difference? Did we just get our mortgage lifted yesterday knowing that we was coming here today? Maybe, maybe not. We're a bit skeptical on some of the things that happen, the timing of things. But we're also, you know, we try to stay a positive mind, and I've spoke to Minister Hutchins plenty of times, and we've had some good yarns about some good things. And she was the one who pushed treaty through this government, and I always acknowledge that. She turned up to the consultations and said she would push it, and she did, and now we're talking treaty. So I acknowledge the good stuff that she does, and I hope that that mortgage being lifted yesterday was just coincidental.
But can the commissioners understand that your observation is that for First Peoples who come and sit here and give evidence, that their evidence sometimes comes at a personal cost? Darren, was there anything you wanted to add on that point?
I suppose what we are sort of really getting around to when we do talk about the holistic of health, and that has been sort of that guiding principle right through VARS. As we talk about social emotional well-being there within our mob, and also too in the contents there in our own culture is about how we sort of look at the model of the social emotional well-being. Because when we're talking about social determinants, you know, we're talking about, as I just elaborated on before there about the voice, you know, you're talking about political, because, you know, A1 is with us, it's always been about politics with us, with our mob, even there to try to get our own voice or our own rights there sort of recognised. I for one there sort of like, you know, I have great concerns. I have great concerns every time when I'm sort of got a opportunity there's like to go for funding, and we talk about it quite often there, that the competition out there, like to actually there's like I've got a service there where we've got about over about 20 odd programs, and we're talking about AOD, we're talking about adult mental health, we're talking about financial counselling, we're talking about a whole sort of sexual assault. These are new areas there where we're actually there trying to sort of, you know, work with, and then if we just get a little bit more piece of sort of what we, you know, should be entitled to run a program that would be sort of fully beneficial there for our, you know, for particularly with our mob, and when we sort of we look into all that whole area there, so like, you know, about the all those social determinants. You're talking about AOD and what impacts on us. I mean, there's been an increase on AOD, sort of people overdose it, and then that in itself is suicide. You know, we're talking about sort of trying to get out there and do prevention work, but tell me, how do you do it? How do you do it with the sort of, with the you know, the minute sort of funding source that you get? Why is it that we've got to be put in sort of competition with other ECHOs and other HOs? As I said, it's like, you know, we have, you know, we've looked at, we've been looked at, or community will come to us. Can you help us there? Because, you know, my son, you know, he's got mental health problems there, but it's just not working for him there within the within the other sort of with mainstream. We've got a program that sort of, look, I have to say this, with this program with Balladurian there, when it first started off there with, before I started, started in this position, and it was the demonstration sites whereby the three major hospitals that we go to there on the mental health wards there with a SUB worker, just one, mind you, started off that way with St. Vincent's, Northern Hospital, and the Austin. And now it's like, what came out of the Royal Commission of Mental Health? Sure, they gave us more funding towards it, whereby we were able then to sort of like, you know, create a multidisciplinary team, therefore to provide that service. But we're still sort of like got the mob there slipping through those gaps and, you know, through the cracks in that system.
Can I just ask a question on that? So you've got the Royal Commission, they've made some recommendations, they've given you money, but does the money take in the complex needs of our people And I think the other question that goes with that, not only the complex needs, but the healing space, does it take into cultural considerations that are not an add-on for our people, they should be a given?
Well, there was those recommendations that came out there from the Royal Commission there, and in particular too about providing a mental health service centre. So 2 of them. So, so far now, how far we're down the track now, and we still haven't sort of heard anything about where we're going to have those centres. And ideally, you want one there sort of within the sort of the metro area, because not only that sort of like what we're looking after there, sort of like on those other 3 hospitals, we're picking up others just because we go outside the box. That's my thinking, and that's the way that's how VARS.
One of the challenges is that state government puts up a lot of integrative models and expect us to partner
Yes.
with other mainstream health agencies, etc. So they come to us saying, can we partner? And, we feel like we should have our own,
Yes.
things like that. So, and they're hard because there are integrative models that really don't serve our purposes, don't, well, how do I say this? They don't address the things you've just said. Yeah. I mean, people can have choice, but we need our own.
So
we're grounded. So we're not
partner
playing.
with a mainstream. Would they hold, like, just generally, I'm just generalising, we're not naming, but would that be that they hold the dollars and then you partner with them? Is that a majority of
Pretty much so, yeah. And, we can partner with mainstream anyway. We don't need formal partnerships at VARS with them. So our position is we need our own. We need to have our own mental health hub so that we can do all those things that we do in our way. We can't do it. It's not our space. It's just not our space.
If I dare say it, disingenuous. So if they're coming out there with, this is what you've got to work with, this is the dollars that's being spent, this is the co-design that you are got to come and work with. And my question is, well, what's in it for us? I said fee for services. Therefore, I know that we put in submissions for a certain amount of money or dollars. No, we don't get it. It just goes back around into this co-designing, process. Ideally, we would like to have a mental health space there for our mob, particularly where it's, we talk about it all the time. Country, it's so important, so spiritually healing, and it's everything there that enables and sort of like empowers us again, but also empowers our own sort of mental health. And we're getting to a point there where that's like, I sort of like, I express this all the time, and you don't get listened to. So I get loud, and then when I get loud, I don't get listened to, and then next thing, it's not that I get shut down. I'll never get shut down, but the whole point, what I want to make is too that we still have people coming to us, looking for that assistance. I was late there for a meeting. We had these days now team meetings. You just go berserk where everybody knows it. But I was late because I was listening to a concern that came through there of somebody driving to work there, and they come across this lady who sort of who come across as an Aboriginal woman with a hospital wristband and had a cut above her head, bleeding. Apparently, it's like she came from one of the mental health units or somewhere. We kind of thought it might have been there with St. Vincent, but so what would I do? We get around there, and with our own networks, we'll try to find out who that person is. And so far now, we don't know. Another person comes through there saying, well, this has happened at one of the other hospitals. It's not meeting the health needs of this guy. He said he needs this one there, so where he came across with our model there with the men's unit, and also therefore that think that that'd be much more sort of like this guy's on the verge. It's saying that's like he's suicidal ideation, and these are the things that's coming to us, and when I sort of look at the whole big picture, I said, look, and and we do it all the time, don't we? Because we paraphrase there with movies and everything. And I keep on saying, that Kevin Costner movie, sort of fills a dream, you build it and, we build it and, they'll come. And that's what it's about. That's holistic. But time and time again, we sort of like there on the ground level, on the grassroots level, have to deal with that constantly with the staff I've got.
Can I just ask on top of that, and maybe either one of you can answer this, but I think you've said it last time in your evidence, Mick, how many funding streams coming in and then how much reporting? And if you think about it roughly, how many hours would that take out of a day, a week,
Yeah.
a year, whatever?
I think I look at last count, we had about 105 reports that we have to do per year. So we've got about 60 or 70 funding streams. It's probably more now. It's probably more. So it equates to a report every 2.5 days or something, or 3 days.
So it's like a full-time role reporting.
It
but
is.
you could have a full-time position.
If we are relying on government funding, which is, and we would strive to be economically independent. If I may, because look, I've been CEO of 2 organisations. One was a native title organisation body, and one was a local Aboriginal New South Wales Land Council that were financially independent. So I've had the experience of not having to go through the beast of government funding, and you've realised how much time and effort you put into that area to be able to continue the service, and it's very draining. It's oppressive in its own right. So yeah, as we're here today, VARS would strive to be financially free and independent because it means that we can respond better to all our needs and those things that Darren's saying. We did say earlier, it's getting better, it's improving, but it's still a huge volume of work back of house that, that we have to continue to do. So it equates to about one every 3 days, I reckon. And that whole cycle is huge. Yeah, it's a lot.
Can I just add to that, Commissioner Hunter, that we have to meet over 600 quality standards to meet accreditation as well, across 8 or 9 different accreditations.
Yeah. The complexities of running a modern day VARS are huge. There's so many jurisdictions and legislations and different accreditations that we have to address every day. So you're navigating through it all the time.
But just reading your submissions that you talk about a major challenge is the adequate ongoing funding. And I just wondered, thinking ahead to the recommendations we might make, are you able to tell us sort of some priorities in funding results that you'd be looking at that we might be able to assist in making recommendations about? I mean, one is, as Darren said, about a psychiatric service, which would I'm sure come out of the Royal Commission. But what's the next 3 or 4, and what are the funding requirements that you'd be looking at?
Commissioner, I might just start with one thing. When I started in the CEO role at VARS, which is getting closer to 8 years now, one of the things I looked at is where our community was coming from to make sure that we was hitting the mark. It showed that we've got regular clients from 498 postcodes. So it's not just here in the Fitzroy catchment, it's further than metropolitan, it's further than Victoria. It just keeps going because, we don't knock back any Aboriginal person who needs our support. So what we did is we looked at a bit of a heat map on where our communities were living within the metropolitan area, and we found that there was this huge cohort out in the western suburbs. They were getting nothing from anybody. And we also looked north, and there was a lot out north, and we looked south and east and everywhere. So we decided that rather than expecting people to come to Fitzroy with, it's a bit of a battle with traffic and parking and all that kind of stuff, that we would take VARS to them. So you're still going to have your Fitzroy people and some of the inner northern suburbs that will go there, but we wanted to go out to them. And it was also, and so we decided we'd start with the northern suburbs. It was also in the, at the time, what was the DHHS, which is now BFFH, Coolin Ballot, Coolin Ballot Jack, because they changed their name, didn't they? It was part of their actions to support this to happen. Well, we got no support from them. And we got no support from anywhere in state, no support from Commonwealth. But it was a need for our community. And just like when we started in 73 and had nothing to work with, we said, no, we're going to do it anyway. And I put a proposal to the board, and it was a risk that the board was willing to take to make sure that we were supporting our people. So we've done that. And I thought that in doing that, and then later, not so long ago, we did the West, it would ease the pressure of Fitzroy and having to come in. Well, that was a mistake, because what happened is it actually attracted more clients from even further out coming into those sites. So now we're at this stage where our numbers, and I think it's in one of the slides, of clients that are coming in, and clients who haven't been seeing GPs and haven't been getting their checkups have huge, multiple complex issues. And we're not an 8-minute sort of medical service where you walk in, you get your 8-minute consult, and out you go. We'll sit down half an hour, whatever it takes, and go through the needs of the client walking in the door. So it takes time. By doing that, your Medicare revenue is very low because you're taking too much time looking after somebody, which is a ridiculous thing. And the primary health funding that we get through Commonwealth, it also has a model of funding. And because we're metro, we are rated at the lowest, right? Even though 75% of the Aboriginal population in this country live in urban areas, they're rated at the lowest for getting funding, which is another ridiculous thing. It's kind of like they just don't want us around. So the needs that are coming through our door are huge at the moment. And I know Darren hasn't said it yet, but I think there's a waiting list for our psychiatrists of about 86 was the last count, I think it was. Gavin will tell you that in Fitzroy, they're getting 1,000 calls a week.
A medical reception.
It's just, it's mayhem. Like, I felt like when I got there, it was like an emergency department, and I thought we'd sort of ease that off a little bit. But the amount of people coming in for support now, it's almost pushing us back to that emergency department. You know, it's back to almost chaos again because of the needs out there. And no matter how much evidence we push through governments to say, here's the needs, and it's only going to get worse because for some reason blackfellas keep having more babies than anything else, but it's only going to grow. And they're pushing all of this money into the tertiary end. Wait till people are broken, and then we might like do something. We've got this fantastic women's and children's program, and they do such great work with families and children, and they're probably one of the least funded in the organisation. From the moment I walked in the door at VARS, my very first meeting was to fight for that funding. I got 12 months, and then each year I get 12 months, and 12 months, and 12 months. This last budget, they finally said, okay, we're going to fund it ongoing with the tiniest little bit of increase of when I first fought for it 8 years ago. Now, population's grown so much more since then, and I'm appreciative that it's going to be some ongoing funding, but it doesn't meet the needs. And that was just set up from a Fitzroy perspective and some of the inner northern, but we've now got western suburbs and northern suburbs, and I mean, I forget the numbers on the clients coming out of east. I just looked at them, so I should know, but it's in the hundreds, and they're coming from everywhere to VARS because of reputation, the culture of the organisation, a whole range of reasons that they come to VARS. It's kind of like we're in a war situation where we just can't keep up with the needs. And, you know, that's not fair on the people who are in need. So in answer to your question, are we funded adequately? Not even close. We probably could use another 3 or 4 times the amount of funding that we're getting right now. And we are increasing our funding, but it's just not keeping up, and it's going to get worse. in saying that, I mean, even government has trusted the VARS model of care, and they've proven that because we are the central point for the public intoxication reform. And it's our ACHOs who do most of the work in the regional areas. So we oversee that because our model of care is brilliant. And then even outside of that, departments actually use our employment assistance program because it's the best one that they've had a chance to use, and it's culturally relevant and looks after not just black fellas, but white fellas as well. So our model of care is recognised, they just won't fund us.
If I might just pull you up there for a second, your written submissions on behalf of VARS also talk about as a conclusion from VARS's submission that there are grave difficulties facing the Aboriginal community health sector in terms of the workforce and being able to keep the workforce up to meet the need that you've just described. Can you just explain that in a little more detail for the commissioners, please?
Yeah, about 50% of we're over 300 staff, around 50%, 55% are Aboriginal, which is in today's world, that's not too bad. Back in the 80s, it was 98%. And it's a very intense, stressful area. A lot of people do it for the love in a lot of cases. People have other options in today's world. So we have to work hard to retain staff and to be able to make sure that it's affordable for them to work at VARS. So we work really hard at that. Look, 50% of our staff are under 35, and of which 60% are Aboriginal. So we have a pool of about 80 young people under 35 that we try to invest in for growth. So we're doing what we can, but there's notwithstanding, the pressures of we have some great staff. We really do. I commend our staff highly. I really do. They go over and beyond all the time. So people do move on to other jobs, and we encourage that. But while we're there, we want to give them the best opportunity we can so that they can grow and things like that. And a lot of people do return back to VARS, and we always say, welcome home. That's what we say. So we do invest a lot in that time and effort to be able to address all those workforce issues and workforce development pathways and entry levels. Like we said, we get 1,000 calls at our Fitzroy Medical. That's only Fitzroy Medical. That's not any of the other programs in the building. So we're putting young people taking 250 calls a day plus overseeing the desk. So it's quite strenuous, and we have to make sure they're safe and we actually train them well. So again, the complexities of running a modern day VARS entails all that. So we are mindful, and we still strive to mentor our young people in these roles and to go down pathways, I guess, workforce pathways. But there is a lot of challenges. I've also got to add that our clinical operations to answer one of your questions, Commissioner, our clinical operations is a financial pressure point within our service. The investment needs to happen in those operations of VARS because it costs a lot of money to run our satellites and our services, right? And so we always find that we get to this point of the year now, and we have a look at what's our shortfall and our gap for the next year. And it could be all right this much because we don't know whether we're getting this money again or that's gone. Okay, how do we do it? So we go through this process every year, and it is again quite strenuous. And fortunately, we're okay at it, but it's not healthy as an organisation to be sitting there not knowing what you're doing in the next 12 months after all this time. So I think, and I don't want to undervalue the economic independence because it's so important, but even the flexible funding and long-term funding, outcome-based, if that's what it is, with that proper investment would go a long way to addressing a lot of our issues. Okay, so at the moment it's still that old cycle, and it's very, very difficult. So,
do you get any support from any of the universities with your workforce issues?
We have, look, we have relationships with universities. We do. Melbourne Uni is just down the road, and there's some wonderful people there. So we can, and even Vic Uni. So there's avenues there. They don't fund us, but there's avenues there where we could put people through and support them through workforce development. And we actually do that a lot. Even the ACU just down the road. I think we've probably got about 10 staff at the moment that are doing registered nursing or optometry, two nurse practitioners. So we're investing in people's formal education and quals to be able to come back and stay at the service basically if they choose to. So we do, but there's no real. I mean, that's we fund all that and pay for all that.
So universities don't provide funded places?
No, not presently.
And I might just add to that, and RMIT is someone we're working with at the moment, but I might just add to that when GPs do their training, they often send registrars to Aboriginal organisations. Why? Why do they do that? Because they don't offer good cultural advice through those courses, right? So they've got to send them out to us to work in the field. So when we send staff to their courses, they're not getting the Aboriginal side of things. And so that's where I think courses in unis and TAFEs and that tend to fail. That was one of the greatest things about Koori College, was that it was done to our models. And so, and our models, I mean, our health workers and others that came out of there, they can work in any field, black or white, didn't matter, because they had more than just the clinical aspect, they had the cultural aspect to it as well. So when you go to a government institution of unis and TAFEs and all that, they just don't have what we can offer. And so, do we want to have a partnership with someone who holds all the power and all the resources? No, let's do our own, because we do it better than them anyway.
Through your funding agreements, through the funding agreements, is there inbuilt resources for you to be able to do professional development for your staff though? Is that built in? So, you get funded a certain amount to run a program. Is it built into it?
I guess it's a question of priorities at the time. Now we have more flexibility in funding. I have to say that than we so we can budget those things in. It's just on how well on where they are, where it might be needed elsewhere. Sometimes we're still going to make those decisions. Yep. So we can't. It's very, very in a state of flux sometimes. But we will make it happen, notwithstanding. Yeah. But we'll have to look at our budget and say, okay, this is what it's going to cost to operate for the next 12 months, see where we're at. We can budget it in there, but knowing that if things fall off, it might be that. So I don't want to undersell it again.
No.
But we can build it in, but it's the financial pressures on those budgets. And some are very stringent, are just very singular. You just do that with it. Some other areas are more flexible. Where you can actually build those things in. But you are competing with every other financial need, I guess, yeah.
Darren, I've noticed that you've been waiting patiently to add something.
Yeah, I know, it's Gavin got the floor.
Well, I'm done now. All right, I'll be quiet.
Yeah, we compete at work like this too. No, it's really getting to that when I think it was touched upon there regarding about even there with the training with the staff there, and particularly with like in the area of mental health there and with the workers that we have is also too is the also trauma, sort of like what I do realise now that what they're saying is vicarious trauma in the workplace, which is another fancy word saying, okay, right, we know that, but as Aboriginal people with our workers, we've been dealing with our trauma for quite some time now. And also to effectively sort of providing the right sort of support there for our staff. I'll touch on, I mean, we just undergone a sort of work safety review. And a part of that was the vicarious trauma within the workplace. And as we all keep on sitting around, and I've been at many forums and we all keep saying it about, caring for the carer and that, as well as like for the workers. to be told there by WorkSafe Victoria that's like, you're not culturally safe. I was like, oh, excuse me. So whereby sort of like our expertise is ignored. Is that, our narrative is stolen, or is it, our self-determination is being ignored? We've addressed that all the time. Yeah, so be it. Okay, we'll go along with that. We'll implement, what needs to be done, but we'll still be there, doing what we always have done there with our workers. And as what Gavin had said, many times that with our workers, they'll come, one of the criticisms from that review too was to state there that with the quality training, we ensure our staff get that quality training. We're able to then have those negotiations with the funding body and saying, right, we need an AOD worker, but however, we just can't get one. So therefore, we need an Aboriginal health worker, or whereby that person will be that social emotional wellbeing worker. So these are the things that we've got to contend with, and then we create that. And therefore, we keep saying all the time is that, we do need to sort of like take real good care of our workers, because the burnout stage for anyone there probably working in that mental health area, sort of probably about 5 years or less. Some have gone, worked longer, which is, it's amazing, but, it's how do you sort of like, sustainable workforce, particularly too, when you get funding there, that's like saying, well, here you go with that. So here we go, we're running first time a sexual assault program, uncharted areas. So therefore we develop it ourselves, and therefore we get the training and we get the expertise. We get the Aboriginal clinicians to come in there to provide us with that best advice there, how to sort of like provide that best supervision for our staff, and also too there for our our clinicians. But it's an ongoing thing, and I do believe we do our best, what we can do with the flexibility of sort of what we can do within our funding.
Chair, the next session is due to start at 2:30. I notice it's now 1:45. I did have one more question touching on matters contained in the written submission on behalf of VARS, and I can ask that, or we can rise now if commissioners would prefer. The witnesses have touched on it in the written submission, but there's a question around cultural safety and mainstream services that I'd like to ask. Are you happy to continue, Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. The written submissions at page 14 speaks about the difficulties with ensuring that in mainstream health settings that cultural safety is delivered to First Peoples in Victoria and I assume elsewhere, and then the demands that are then placed on VARS to help the mainstream services develop their own cultural safety. Is your observation? What is your observation as to the level of awareness and the competency that exists in the mainstream services as at present?
Okay. Well, I think it's 1 in 4 Aboriginal people that present at hospital walk away. One of our tasks is to decrease the episodes of presentations at ED. So that's the value of an organisation like VARS. They're more likely to come and see us than go to a hospital. There's some whole different levels of different experiences and stereotypes and things like that. Hospitals do have an appetite, but hospitals have 12,000 staff or 8,000. Racism is rife and opinions are rife, and that affects people. So yeah, and people generally don't like the hospital experience. So there's a whole range of data sets around that. I will say that it's our task. We want to decrease the amount of people presenting to an ED because of those reasons. If they're coming to see us, they're less likely to have to need a hospital. You've probably heard all the stories about all that, but it is very stereotypical. It's a huge body of work because it can be just that person over that bedside at that particular time and things like that, right through to just abhorrent care at times. So that's how I would say it. It's and the pressure on us as an organisation to teach people cultural safety is huge. It's almost its own entity within our service, and that takes us away from our primary core business of delivering healthcare to our. So we have to be careful where we invest our time into that, and we're looking at how we do it because everybody wants it from us. Everybody wants to know what cultural safety is and us to tick the boxes and all that. But there's a lot of time factors within those things, and it's a huge body of work. And
is VARS adequately funded to carry out all?
no,
of that?
not at all. Not at all. It's not part. No, and that's an issue.
You add that to the reporting and the accreditations
Yeah,
and all that,
yeah.
all that back of house
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, the want from us is unbelievable. I will say that when I talk to, whether it's my own family or anyone that's in the community, and this isn't everybody, but there's always a fear in a hospital. If you go in there and have a baby, generally there's a social worker or child protection worker there ready to take your kid off you. So those things happen. It's also a place where if you go in there with a couple of bruises, they think, well, family violence straight away. And for our elders, it's the place you go to die. So those things are always on people's minds. And I don't know if you can ever remove that or if it will ever be removed. And it'll take many years of good service for that to happen. There's good people in hospitals. There is. I was in hospital last year for operation, was treated excellent.
Yeah.
No complaints whatsoever. But when I go into the outpatients, if I'm sitting there and I might have my Aboriginal flag on or something like that, then all straight away you feel the eyes looking at you. And that's not from the staff, that's from the people you're sitting in the same room with. And when you add that to, I know Darren's brought up a couple of times the whole voice referendum and things like that. We see it on social media, anything about Aboriginal people. As soon as we put somebody Aboriginal up, they want to bring them down. That's the society we live in. So when it comes to hospitals, there's so much investment going into hospitals and so little investment going into the services that prevent people from needing the hospitals. It's just crazy. It happens even within our organisation. The investment into the work that Darren does is far greater than the investment that goes into the work that Gavin's holding, which is that clinical stuff, health checks. You come get a health check, we'll look after you, we'll see what conditions you got before they become out of hand. People have come in for health checks and found out that they've had a heart attack. And, we work through that with them and they thank us for saving their lives and things like that. But hospitals, they keep building more, they keep fixing them up, but it's a scary place for our people. And it's not just based on the staff either or the environment, as in, they put some nice artwork on the wall or something like that. But that stigma is going to take decades and decades to go away, I think. But we get no funding to support them, even though they come to us and say, hey, can you help us with this? Can you help us with that? No funding. So, it's just more pressure on us. And, a lot of the times we don't knock back that because we know it's going to help our mob. And that's all we're concerned about is helping our people. And so we put ourselves as executives, managers, staff through that pain of overburden because we just want to care for our community.
And we just want to make a difference. So we do it.
Thank you. Commissioners, we could probably spend all afternoon with this panel, but I think I suggest it might be a convenient time to rise for the lunch break. They have VARS has provided us the Commission with a written submission which touches on the areas that we've discussed. Unless there's anything further from the commissioners.
Thank you all very much. It's I can't say it's a pleasure, but it is great to have you here to hear what you've got to say, and it's so important. And the way you've done it is the presentation is very community spirited, from something that sort of adds on to Aunty Elma's story about how Fitzroy was a long, long time ago. So thank you very much for that history as well.
And I'd just add my special thanks, not only to your oral evidence today, but I've spent time reading the history document that you presented, and it's so well written, so informative, and a really inspiring story. So to read that and then for you to come along and talk to it has been a very, very rewarding.
Okay, so the Commission will adjourn until 2:30. Thank you.
So please, the Commission.